Good
So
evening,
Dr.
Tam.
Rob, hi, Dr. Rob. The first question we have is married 40 years, 4 years of healing from 8 years of acting out and a lifetime of porn. Spouse has been hospitalized for depression 6 years ago. He has slipped several times online, and this last time I completely lost it with my anger. And he hasn't slipped since, but his depression has gotten worse and he has been sleeping a lot. On the one hand, I feel guilty about losing my temper and screaming at him, but on the other hand, I wonder if this behavior is just an immature person who can't have what he wants.
Well, thank you for writing. I mean, I think those are difficult things to talk about, and I admire it. I wrote a book called Pro-Dependence, and I'm bringing it up for a reason. It is a book for spouses and partners and family members to come to peace with being involved with an addict, whether it's a son or a daughter. And one of the things that I put in there was a woman, oh, I'm sorry, one woman had written me about it, and she said, thank you so much for the book, because I don't know if I told you this, Tammy. She said, for years, it really bothered me that I yelled at my son and he went out, unfortunately, and he passed away from heroin or wherever he did. And it's been torturing me for years that if I had not yelled at him, all of that. And what I try to help her understand is she's a human being. And we get frustrated and we get angry. And most of all, we are not responsible for the behaviors of someone else. Your anger may have made him sad or miserable or whatever that is, but his acting out, his depression, these are not sourced in you. So I understand completely the feeling of, what is my part? Would they be doing better if I hadn't done this or that? But I think of that as being remorse. Meaning when I'm in grief about something, like I've been married 40 years and my husband is in the hospital and he hasn't been able to stop acting out and our lives are going down the drain, that's something that involves a lot of grief. And I think it's sort of like when my dog died, I thought, oh, I wish I'd walked him more. I wish I'd played with him more. I wish is what comes up when we lose somebody or when we're in some ways you have lost him for a while. So I just want you to come to peace with that. I know, Tammy, I don't know if I've said this to you, and I don't mean to insult this person anyway, but one of the things they tell us therapists when we make a mistake and we do something wrong is they say, you're just not important. Like, you're not going to make that much of a difference in one person's life. They have their own self. And so, I don't think it's something that has been a major contributor. If anything, I think he already feels terrible about what he's done. And he probably feels terrible for having left you feeling so upset. So, and no, he's not an immature person. He's a broken person. And, I have worked in not just sex addiction treatment programs, but I've worked in psychiatric hospitals. And people don't hospitalize people for depression if they're having a bad day or they're immature. Someone has, sorry, let me turn off my phone. Someone has to have some kind of meaningful, I don't care. Don't talk to me. Hold on. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I pressed some settings. Now I'm really messed.
Welcome to
silent responses.
technology.
Okay, I'll just put that on automatic. Maybe that will help. So,
So
okay.
people don't get hospitalized for depression if they're having a bad day.
Or because they act out sexually. And, it's certainly possible that his stopping acting out, and Tammy and I talk about this all the time, that addiction is an attempt to cover up other feelings. And it may be that his depression is so profound that stopping the behavior has left him having to deal with depression in a way that he didn't have to when he was acting out. So, but I really hope you don't take responsibility. And, 40 years is precious and wonderful. I'm so grateful for every day I have with the person I love. And certainly, there's always room for amends and cleaning things up. And you've made it this far. You'll probably be okay going forward. So.
I wanted to tag on, a couple of things of, of course you were blindsided by, this happened again. And, you're feeling like, oh, we've navigated some of this and, things are, hopefully better. And then, you have that. So two things I thought of was support for you and making sure you have that support so that when something happens, and let's just say it will happen again, that you have the support that you need. And it's not that you are not entitled to your anger, but what I hear is remorse about how it came out. And so, that you have the safe space to go, vent and, and then come up with a plan to share a message that may be more helpful. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong. Please hear that. But it was just more what I hear you taking on for yourself. And the other thing, and so Dr. Rob, you said, you may have made him. And I really own that nobody can make me feel anything, or nobody can make me do anything. I can have a reaction to something somebody did or said, and I'm unfortunately, and I hate it, I am responsible for my actions and reactions. So if I'm angry at something, that means I need to go take care of myself in some way, that is different. So, but my point is, you can't make him feel more depressed. You can't make him do whatever. Dr. Rob says this all the time. Nothing you did or didn't do caused this, and nothing you do or don't do is going to change. A lot of this is him having the right support. I mentioned before Dr. Rob joined us that, like the sex addiction 101, what I hear is somebody who possibly doesn't have a strong enough foundation in his recovery. And yes, then there's other aspects with, depression or mental health issues. But, at some point, get the foundation, so that you feel better about yourself on some levels too. But, and I know Dr. Rob has talked about having an addiction person who can diagnose properly, for depression and adjust meds if necessary. But for you, I really encourage you to I'm glad you're here, but I really encourage you to have, your support network that can hold you, your tribe that, so you can go, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened again. And they'll get it. Other thoughts, Dr. Rob?
No, I mean, I just always encourage kindness to and think about this. You're going through a really hard time. This is the time you need to be kindest to yourself. Now, had you taken on a knife and gone after him, I might have a different discussion with you.
No, you would have
But
totally, because we talk about domestic violence and
yes,
rage.
that's
So yes,
true.
that's
But
different.
let's keep moving, Tammy. I want to
Okay.
make sure everyone gets
The next
answers
one
here.
is, I am not able to think clearly about this and would like your view. My husband agreed not to masturbate, and when I asked him if he has been doing it, he admitted he does periodically. I asked him if he does it watching porn, and he said no. He fantasizes about me. It made me nauseous, and I don't take it as a compliment, but as him objectifying me.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer this as best I can with the information I have, Tammy, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you to put on your I'm a wife hat to someone you love and are in a commitment relationship with, and say, how you would respond to, especially the second part of this. But I want to just say something clinically. I have a PhD in human sexuality. It is very healthy for a man to masturbate occasionally. If you're not a sex addict, and you're not depriving your loved one of an intimate relationship, I am not going to say to them, I don't want you to masturbate. Now, if there are religious or spiritual reasons or ethical, that's something different, something you would agree to. But with a healthy person, and also I think people have a right to their privacy. And if we are not breaking some agreement that we have made around spiritual, ethical, if we are still having a healthy, intimate life, I'm not sure that it necessarily has to be something my spouse knows about. I certainly don't run to my husband every day and say, guess what I did 3 days ago? So, as far as the porn, I don't know, I don't know what reality is. I don't know. I know that if you were my wife, I would want you to feel better. If I already knew that you were upset about my masturbation, I probably would think you're going to be even more upset about the porn. And what would make me feel like maybe I could make you less upset is by saying to you, oh, I'm thinking about you, which means in man code, if I say it's about you, maybe you won't get as upset with me. This has nothing to do with addiction. This is more the dynamics of a relationship and your values. So I, to be honest, if my spouse said, I've been masturbating occasionally, I'm thinking about you, I'd be, oh, how nice to be. I mean, that would be me. But you have a different reaction to it, and I respect that. And that is, I think here's the best way of saying I'm going to let this go. I think this is absolutely a couples therapy issue. I think this is where you could be with a safe professional and both sit down and say, we're not sure how to manage this. And let me hear her views and let me hear his views. And let's all talk about what might work or what isn't working. Because I think this is, especially these very sensitive issues, it's hard to sit down at the kitchen table and figure out. It's hard enough to talk about it at all. especially when you have different views, there might be conflict. You don't want to be in conflict around this. So if you are able to in any way, I would, and by the way, couples therapy, to those of you, it is not 3 years. In my opinion, couples therapy is an issue has come up. We need to work on it. We might go for 6 weeks or 6 months, and then we're done until the next issue arises. It isn't like individual therapy where you might be going a long time. So I think it's much more issue driven, my opinion. So Tammy, what are your thoughts as a
Well,
woman, as a spouse? I'd love
yeah,
to
well,
hear.
and here's the thing, like you took it out of the context of there's addiction, and so and it does not
I
say
did.
my SA or PA husband. So I felt like that was the, in a healthy relationship, but I think, like Dr. Rob said, if it's really bothering you, if you are feeling objectified, that is something to talk about in therapy. And I'm going to layer on, if there has been a history of, a porn addiction or sex addiction, then, then I would feel pretty raw about that. And I'm confident I would feel objectified too, that I'm just being included as part of the porn. We hear this often from betrayed partners. So I'm, again, moving it to the addiction world, that they feel like when they're having sex with their addict, even if he has stopped the problematic behavior, that they're part of the porn, they're part of the fantasy. So it is challenging, and it is a place for conversation, and that would be a very delicate one. And I really do think you'd be best served by having the two of you go in a vulnerable way, so not defended, of like, well, I deserve to
I'm right,
masturbate.
you're wrong.
And
Right.
yeah, I mean, if you're really looking to navigate this, it's going to be navigating it together. And how can we, like Dr. Rob said, find a space that works for both of us. But the lying, I think the big thing for me was lying. Because if he agreed to it, if you asked and that was part of something that was important to you, and he broke that promise, that to me is, that feels like part of the issue is he's broken his promise to me, that
Right.
he said he wasn't going to do this. I found out about it. He didn't come to me and say, guess what,
Right.
so
Right.
it feels like that could be more a part of the issue, with all of this.
Yeah, as a man and a husband, I feel like I'm talking to mommy and I'm 12. What happened in those sheets, and why did it's just, to me, I'm an adult male. And again, if healthy, we need to negotiate. If I feel differently, Tam is absolutely right. If I want to be able to do it, then we have to have an honest discussion. And you may not agree with me, and maybe, but but this feels a little bit like, why are you doing that? You promised you wouldn't. And that might be true if I'm spending too much on a car, but if it is something so personal and so intimate, I think that requires more discussion. Then I don't want you to do that. It just feels very personal. I will also say something to you that and this is out of complete respect, I hope that you hear it in the right way, but the idea of being nauseous rather than not feeling comfortable out, not liking it, it makes me wonder, is there
Mm,
something in your past that made people feel that made you feel uncomfortable? Maybe you
mm,
were around people who are masturbating. Maybe you were shown porn when you were young. Maybe something happened, because it's one thing to say I'm angry and I don't agree and I feel upset and
mm.
I don't want them to think of me that way, but to have a physical reaction makes me think that there might be something for you in all of that that you might want to figure out from the past, because I don't want you walking around feeling nauseous.
Right.
Something may be there to look at. So I'm
Yeah,
not accusing you. I'm not.
right. No, that's a great call. And to have that strong of a reaction, and the physical
Physical.
body react.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. The next question: addict, sober 6 months. My wife is still on the emotional roller coaster of betrayal trauma, and whenever things inevitably get rough for her, I feel like everything is going wrong with recovery and myself, and I'm buried in shame. So, how do I stop my wife from ever getting? I'm
So,
sorry.
okay, well,
How do I
read
stop
it
my wife
and
from
then
ever
explain.
getting upset with me again? Just kidding. Oh, thank you. I
Oh,
didn't
okay,
see
thank
that.
you.
How do I emotionally root myself in something other than my wife's feelings towards me on a given day? Thanks for the laugh. So, okay.
Well, number one, I'm concerned that you're buried in shame, because
Mhm.
uh, I I don't think that you um, I work with some bad people and malicious people. I rarely have them taking the time to be in a place like this. So if you're not a bad and malicious person who's intended to hurt your spouse, then I guess what happened is that you are broken and you're an addict and you have slips. And broken people don't necessarily do things, how do I say this? Um, Broken people don't necessarily get buried in shame. I don't get buried in shame because they get depressed. I don't think an alcoholic should get buried in shame because they drink. I think it means they need to double up. They need to figure out what happened. They went back into my sponsor used to say, I had a flare up of my mental illness when he had a
Oh,
slip.
wow.
And I
Yeah.
love that because it was like, oh yeah, I had a little bit of return of my craziness. And now I need to just get back on board. So the feeling of your shame, no matter how upset she is, I think that's probably misplaced and something you need to work on. What I just taught, I was just teaching at Seeking Integrity. I was just working with the guys, and that's our residential treatment center. And they're probably there now listening.
Hmm.
But we were talking about the issue of partner empathy and how do I make my partner feel better? And a couple of things. Number one, ask them, what would make you feel? This was shocking. One of the guys like, I don't need to figure it out. I could just ask her what would make her feel better. Yeah, ask her. That would be one of the things. She might say, well, you know what? I would feel better if you went to more meetings. I would feel better if you did whatever. So you might be able to go around that issue by going straight into it. The other thing is, what I say to the guys all the time, if you are feeling shame and hating yourself, think about them rather than thinking I'm so awful, I can't believe I did this. Think about they must be really angry or they must be really disappointed. It's really hard to focus on someone else and yourself at the same time. This is one of the reasons why we have service, and the idea of service in a 12-step program is because when I am obsessed with my misery and I go help someone else, I generally feel better. So rather than being obsessed with your own misery, why don't you find out what you can do to make her feel just what's going on with her and what does she want to know, and I would think about, and this is the hard part for us, is empathy. I wonder what she's feeling right now. She looks angry. Then I might say, you seem really angry. I completely understand that. Or you're crying. You seem really sad. In other words, focus on them and what they need and what's going on with them and ask them questions. It's much harder to focus on your shame when you're actually looking outside of yourself. And my suggestion always is, if when you're looking inward, put that down and turn forward and say, who can I help? Who can I support? Who can I look at other than me? That seems to be, and by the way, look at the person around whom you feel ashamed. You feel ashamed around your wife. Don't ask her for forgiveness. Don't tell her how ashamed you are. Don't bring her into your own misery with you. Say to her, wow, this must be hard on you. Or I bet you're furious that this isn't getting better, or at least you think, focus on her. And I think, first of all, that'll be a surprise. And second of all, as we teach in Out of the Doghouse, which is a course, it's a book that I've written. It is my most popular book. There is a book on empathy and teaching men who've cheated how to negotiate understanding and insight into what they've put their spouse through. And I think we are so focused on ourselves as addicts, and that self-hatred, that betrayal, that I'm such a horrible person, I can't believe I did this, I hate myself. That's more thinking about me. And I think what was helpful is to think about them and what they're going through. And that is where the healing is. So, yeah.
So, well, I'm going to tag onto the roller coaster analogy is buckle up. I mean, you like, this is, you are 6 months in and yay, but she didn't know. You did. You knew all along that you had this, secret life, double life, etc. So now she's discovered it. And so she's at, 6 months. You've had however many years, decades you were acting out, you knew. Now you've been caught, so to speak. So I would anticipate she will have this, probably at least another year, and it will taper off. It'll get to the less exciting part of the roller coaster ride. I love roller coasters, but so I say that, but it's one of
I
those things
don't.
where I do. But it's one of those things where, how do you navigate this? Eddie Caparucci does some great webinars on this topic. They're posted on our website. I think you too would find help for that. The other thing you didn't include is, what is she doing to get support? With the last question, I was like, what do you have for support, to the betrayed partner? And I think it's really important, that she has, the safety net. She knows what things are. I posted in the chat the Out of the Doghouse work group. And if you've got a solid foundation of recovery, ideally you've gone through Sex Addiction 101, Part 1, or Porn Addiction 101, Part 1. That's, those are foundational components. But then the Out of the Doghouse for men who've been caught cheating is really good. But guess what? We've got the Betrayed Partners from a Codependent Lens. That starts again in August. Those are great. Those are 6-week courses, 90 minutes per week. They're live facilitated, and so there's an opportunity to ask questions. And there's homework to do, but it's to help you get that foundation. So I'm glad you're here. You don't have to do this alone, either of you, and honestly, you won't be successful if you try to do it alone. So there are so many tools that that we talk about to help you guys navigate where you're at now. So please lean in. Drop-in groups, I didn't mention this, but we've got drop-in groups for each of you separately. They're different than a webinar, so please check those out on our site too. Okay, next question, Dr. Rob. Betrayed partner of 42 years, SA husband, is doing all the recommended recovery work. New neighbors moved in behind us. We're on a slight hill, so our house sits higher, and if we look out our upstairs window, we see the entire yard from our ground floor and see their patio. They installed a hot tub and use it several times a day. The mom and teenage daughter and friends lounge beside it wearing bikinis. In our formal therapeutic disclosure, I found out my husband did voyeurism behaviors, including, but not limited to, looking at females in bikinis when jogging, biking past swim clubs. He promises to avoid looking in their yard and will tell me if he sees something he didn't intend to. He also told his sponsor about the situation. Please help me think through how to handle this, because right now I'm so effing triggered.
Okay, well, take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
No one has been physically touched. There's not been physical harm. It doesn't sound like he's been sexual with any person. So feelings are not facts. You're having strong feelings, but I would take a step back from those feelings and look at the facts. That might help you to feel less triggered. Because even whatever it is that I have to say is not going to kind of sink in if you're in that, oh my God, I'm so furious kind of place. So I'm going to say this again, and none of you spouses are going to like it. It is normative. It is healthy for men to find young women who are post-pubescent, 16, 17, 18, attractive. That is how we're built. We're built to procreate. When we see a young woman who might be able to have a baby, we are naturally and biologically drawn to look. What I can show you chapter and verse. Touching, not okay. Hanging out, talking to, flirting with, not okay. Noticing and looking at, I'm not talking about addicts now. I'm talking about just and so I want to say that it is not pedophilia, or for me to say, oh, they're really attractive. Look at them in that bathing suit. That's healthy. For me to stare at them, that's not so healthy. For me to stand in front of the window and masturbate to them, that's not so healthy. But to notice that someone is attractive and they are post-pubescent and they're beautiful in their bikini, that's being human. So I'm going to layer on stuff, but let me start there. Number 2, this is not voyeurism. Voyeurism is when you are looking in someone's window and you are secretly peeping on them. If I saw somebody go by and they were attractive, or if I saw someone in their pool, I might look occasionally. I don't think that's not voyeurism. Voyeurism is an illegal paraphilic act. And I'm not saying that they're not looking or it isn't the best choice, but I like to use the right words because people get into things like perpetrator and offender when that's not who we are and that's not what he's doing. I have to say the first thought I had about all of this was get one of those spray paint things that frosts a window. That was my first thought, and frost the window, because it may simply be not something that is, how do I say this? As an addict, there are certain things that, let me try it this way. If I'm an alcoholic, I don't go into bars by myself and hang out, especially in early on. It's not unlikely that I'm going to use. If I have an eating disorder and I hang out in bakeries, it's probably not a good idea for me. So being constantly exposed to something that triggers me is going to make it difficult for my recovery. It would be better if I simply didn't have access to that. Since you probably don't tell your neighbors to get rid of their hot tub, it's none of your business. You know, I know windows, I have a window where it's frosted halfway and the sun comes in and all of that, but I don't, not because of this, I don't want people looking in, but nonetheless. So I would think about and work with him on concrete ways that you might leave this feeling safer for both of you. Sun can still come in, beautiful day. I'm sure you have other views, but maybe half or that particular window is frosted. So it's not hanging like low fruit in front of him every day. So I understand what might be going on with him, both as an addict and as a male human being. I understand to some degree how furious and frightened that would make you, understandable completely. And it would be difficult for me as an addict to not be thinking about that window, wanting to go over to that window because I'm an addict. And, you know, it's like the open bottle, and I've been 6 months sober. Sometimes in early recovery, people take all the bottles out of the house. It's not because that we don't think that the person's going to drink, but why have an open bottle in the house when someone's trying to get sober? So I don't look at it any differently than that. And if you were able to take just a piece of that, it might take some of the trigger away from you. What we are talking about is objectification. And we have rules about that, you know, and they go, and you don't need to know the details, but it could be something like we teach people to look for a moment, say that's attractive, and look away, and then think of them as someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's mother, you know, humanize them or pray for them, and then keep going. So we actually teach people how to, as addicts, how to manage situations that present themselves, you know, and so I might, and let me say this, I go to the grocery store. I find people attractive. I notice, I look, I think, especially as I get older, God bless them, they're so beautiful at being young. That's what I think. But I don't go back around the aisle to check on them a second time. You know, I don't go this way to make sure I see the front. So noticing being attracted, that's healthy. It is. Even for us sex addicts, we're going to see someone, we're going to be attracted. That's human. But what do I do with that attraction? Do I follow them? Do I stare at them? Or do I look away? So you said something like, okay, and one more thing. It is not voyeurism to looking at someone jogging by. That may be objectification, but there's nothing voyeuristic about that. That's finding somebody attractive. Going and looking in their window or staring in their window, or if he spends 20 minutes looking out your bedroom window or looking into their house, if he's masturbating to looking out that window, that's a whole different thing than I see someone who's 25 riding on a bike in a bikini. I think, wow, that's a very beautiful person. That's not voyeurism. It may be objectifying, which addicts do, but it's not voyeurism. So, and I'll say one more thing. He's talking to his sponsor about this. He's telling you, is that right? Did he tell you? Da, da, da? I found out in our full disclosure. He told you. He said he's telling his sponsor. So in a way, I might feel more encouraged that I'm getting this information, even though it makes me uncomfortable. I'd rather know than not know. So this is multi-layered. There is no single answer. And also, as before, I'm playing both sides, which is what would it be to be a healthy male or even a male sex addict versus what is his pure sex addiction? And I don't know your situation or know this person, but you know, I wouldn't be surprised if any person looks at a healthy person. It's what we do to it and do with it and how we carry it through. And if for me, I'd frost the window.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm so practical. I would be, you know, because a curtain can be pulled aside. So yes, I was going like, you know, stained glass could be really lovely, you know. So
Can I say one more thing about that?
yeah.
They have shades that let in all the light, but they're opaque. You know, there
Mhm.
are lots of ways to make it look pretty without. Anyway, I'm done. Sorry, Tammy.
Yes. No, do the practical solution that's going to help you feel safe and minimize, you know, I do appreciate that he's talking to a sponsor and all that. But again, removing the, you know, temptation or the, like, I don't want you walking by the window and, you know, checking them out and going, I wonder if he's been standing here, you know, like all of that.
Right.
It's just too much, you know, headspace for both of you. So what can you, as a practical, you know, practical thing do? So I was thinking I could also paint the serenity prayer on the glass, you know, so there'd be something on there that would be different. Okay. Today I was texting my friend. He was asking how things were. He knows what I did to my wife, the infidelity. I told him it takes time to rebuild a relationship and marriage. He said it has been 2 years and my wife should get over it. I told him I did a lot of wrong in my marriage. He said if she doesn't get over it after 2 years, I should move on. I'm guessing he meant divorce. Before I could respond, my wife came into the room and wanted to see my phone. She grabbed my phone and, oh, hang on, I gotta go find the
It's
rest of
okay.
it. Yep, I did. Okay.
And
All right, here's the
read.
rest of it. She grabbed my phone and read what my text was. So she lost it. She's not happy, as you can imagine. She told me to make a choice between her and my friend. She doesn't see how he is helping me or supporting me and us. I can see her point of view and how her feelings of betrayal have continued to be hurt by what my friend has texted. We talked about the boundaries and what that means. She thinks I believe that when she demanded I make a choice, she is setting her boundaries and not controlling me. Oh, there's more. Hang on.
Okay, guys, you don't get to
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
5-part
No, yeah.
questions.
I'm not done talking to my friend and she thinks I did not stick up for her. Can you please talk about this? So there, that's it. Oh no, there's more, but we're not going to go to those. So
Okay, so I think I want you to start, Tammy, because I feel like, let me just say this, it feels to me like I'm giving a lot of pushback to the spouses tonight, and I don't mind doing that. And trust me, just because I push you back a little bit does not mean I don't understand the problem. I have written books for spouses. I've run spouses groups. I do understand. And there are ways in which the incredible intensity of the feelings may cause you to go further than you really need to or should. And sometimes it's useful to get pulled back a little bit. And I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm handing it to Tammy first. Let me get some water, Tammy. I'm here. I can hear you.
okay, yeah. Uh, so her, what I hear is her setting a boundary of and that sounds like she's doing that for her emotional security. So we talk about boundaries are for my safety. My needs are, you know, physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual. I talk about those, regularly on all these webinars and things. But I think it's really important. And what I hear her doing is this is an emotional boundary for her, and she feels that I'm making this up just from what I'm
Right.
reading, but but what I hear is she does not feel that your friend is a safe person. And honestly, from what I'm reading, it appears that message of, oh, you hurt her, but she should get over it. This is really challenging because betray partners are never completely over it. There's always, you've proven that you can hurt her. She might have naively, and I say that with love, thought that it was the two of you and you're working towards this, relationship together and all this. And then she found out that you actually can hurt her. And so now your friend is going like, well, dang it, she should be all over this. And, you can move on, greener pastures on the other side. But, to me, I wonder what work you are doing to show her that you really are trustworthy. Because if she's not feeling trust, like that there's trust, or that you go, oh yeah, there's my crazy friend. But I'm also kind of wondering what is in the relationship with your friend that you're willing to cause an issue with your wife. I mean, that, like I lost a whole bunch of friends, in my addiction, because when I got sober, when I got into recovery, they weren't safe. And I had to make a choice, my forward moving in recovery or hanging on to the old life. Straddling the fence is not comfortable. It's a picket fence and it's very spiky. So to me, I'd be more questioning, if this friend is not a safe person for your relationship and your relationship with your wife is primary, it may be that you need to push that friend out, not share those kind of topics at the very least. But to me, it's really what do you want? Do you want your friend or you want your wife? Because it does feel a little bit of a choice. What are your thoughts, Dr. Rob?
Well, I feel differently.
And
So
please.
I think that a lot of men are really clueless about this. And if they haven't faced their wife's disappointment, it's easy to say, oh, go do this. I have had many women whose friends, everyone said, why don't you leave him? Well, it's not your marriage. And so it's easy to stand on the outside and give advice about something that you know nothing about because they're not involved in your relationship. So I don't think that this person is trying to, I would guess, unless this person knows about the addiction and everything that's happened and all that, my guess is they're just giving dude advice. And it's, just what they're saying. And maybe they've cheated. Who knows what's going on with them? What I would want, what I would want to see is a note from my spouse to them saying, you know what, we disagree about the whole thing related to my wife's forgiving me, and I don't want to talk about that anymore. Can we just please not discuss anything about my marriage or golf? Great, friendships, great, work, great. I don't know the nature of this friendship. For me, if someone asked me to give up a 30-year friendship because I didn't like what they had said, I would have strong feelings about that. And I would feel controlled. So now I don't know anything about recovery or how this person's doing, or are they going to meetings or therapy? I'm talking about your husband now. I don't see any of that. So I have no idea the quality of the healing that might be going on or how that may leave you feeling. So I don't have any background of all this. So I can only say what I know and think. And Tammy and I often don't agree completely. But if it were me, I would want to sit with my spouse and watch him write. When we talk, please don't talk to me about this. It makes me very uncomfortable because I think he's the one who needs to set the boundary. And boundaries don't necessarily have to be black or white. What you can do is say to her, what he could do is say to you, listen, I'm going to set this boundary. And anytime he reaches out to me, I'm going to show you what he said. Great.
So this is the addict that wrote this. So like yeah.
No, the addict is the person so let me go back. The addict texted his friend.
Right.
His friend said, I think I know what he did to his wife, the infidelity. It doesn't mean he talked about everything, but that it was infidelity. I told him absolutely appropriately, it takes a long time to heal these things because that your husband is right. The friend said, hopefully not understanding any of this really, that she should be over it. But watch what your husband said. I mean, you read this. I told him that I did a lot of wrong in my marriage. He is owning his part. And then the other guy said, oh, you should move on. This should get over. Who knows what it meant? We don't even know what he was going to say next. So he might have said, he's already said, I don't agree with you. I really hurt her. So I don't want to go on and on about this. But again, I think just saying don't ever talk to them again is stronger than I would want to handle it because I would feel controlled by that, especially. And let me say, if this is a friend he's known for 6 months, someone he's in a long-term meaningful friendship with, different. Now, one more thing, and to Tammy's point, if this is someone he went to strip clubs with or that he hung out with in sexual situations and they reinforced each other, absolutely, I would want him to stop. That's to me where the Tammy says, look, I had to get rid of a lot of people I drank and hung out with. But I bet there are people who knew about what she was doing and she's still friends with them. And they may have said to her, people drink all the time. It doesn't mean she stopped being friends with them. It's just she said, don't tell me that. I don't agree with you, whatever that is. So I don't know enough about it, but I think both of us are right. There may be situations where you have to set a black and white boundary for yourself, and there may be situations that can be negotiated. And I don't know which one this is. I don't think either of you are wrong or right. I think there needs to be a lot more help and discussion, another couples issue that you might take to therapy. Tammy, you're not wrong and I'm not right, and I'm not wrong and you're not right.
No,
There you go.
and I agree. Yeah, and you're right because we're getting these snippets of things,
Right.
and I don't know how long this friendship. It just as my friend, and it could be really, in my opinion, poor dude advice, and it could be like if you guys are 6 months in, like that, like oh my goodness, of course there's there hasn't been trust built. So if this is you've been doing this for 3 years, that's a very different very different place. And I think you said that. So, but yeah, 2 years. Yeah. But this is, it's what are your actions doing? And you did say, I said, yeah, I really hurt her. So I think that there's some, good things that you're showing. But like I said with the person earlier too, a betrayed partner gets hit by a Mack truck because they didn't know. And then, so it's this whole thing of like, oh my gosh, has all of this been a lie? And then going, oh, your friend is trying to get you to, leave me or go back to this relationship. So it's very complicated. I think having the conversation about, and I think for the betrayed partner, it's really, for my safety, minimizing, or, maybe just for a little while, we don't, we need to figure out where this friendship is, and how we can safely navigate, moving forward. So, but to me, and Dr. Rob just recorded, I can't wait, a new
I was going to
podcast with
say
Dr.
something about
Stan
that.
Tatkin. But I said, oh, good, because probably one of the most often referred to podcasts with Dr. Rob, which has almost 1.3 million downloads. But the one he did with Dr. Stan Tatkin a while back is called
And
We Do.
the
Yeah,
new
I
one.
can't, but it's not done yet. It's not done yet.
Yeah.
So it'll be coming. So stay tuned. But it talks about, in this relationship, we have to think about what's good for the relationship and how do we navigate that. So I think a conversation with, about all of that will be interesting and challenging, but hopefully you get some support on that.
And I want to reinforce one thing Tammy said. Have you been working on this for 5 years or 6 months? And the reason I brought up Dr. Tatkin is because the whole topic is relationship conflict. That's what we talked about for 2 podcast episodes. By the way, feel free to type in the podcast if you did, because I think everybody would benefit from it, at least at least those 1.3 million people have. But in any case, one of the things we talked about, I really want to understand with him, because we came up with all kinds of strategies about, which he's written extensively about, has a new book about couples conflict. The one thing I said to him, though, is what if a situation comes up like a spouse just finds out they have been betrayed? Do you think all these tools and lessons and ideas will be useful? And he said, no. He said, until the crisis is over, until you are really in a place, could be a year before you can really meaningfully find ways to go forward as a couple. And you can't do it while that crisis is going on. It's sort of like that. Can I go on vacation with my family? Well, not until your child is out of the hospital and doing a lot better. So, and this is why we don't recommend couples therapy in the beginning, because while there's this crisis, you can't really work on going forward. So part of this depends to me on how long it has been, and how hard the two of you have been working with support and help and all of that. So
yes, and just quickly, even though you said it's 2 years, but what is that 2 years? Because there's 2 years of I've been daily working on all of these things, and I've been, working with my therapist. I've done all of the work, and then there's 2 years of like, well, she's known about it for 2 years, and I haven't really done anything. So the quality matters, not just the quantity of time. Okay. My SA partner procrastinates at what seems like a pathological level. He is oppositional and holds a lot of resentment towards me. He is diagnosed with ADD and as a child, but has not seen a medical doctor in years as an adult. We joke that he might be high functioning on the spectrum, but really there's truth in joking. If he does have a disorder that could potentially be making his addict behavior worse, like ADD or Asperger's, how do I deal with that, especially if we don't have a diagnosis and may never have one?
well, for me, this would be a boundary, which is I am sitting here with you and supporting you in your healing, and you are not doing everything that you can to make it better. This is absolutely what Dr. Tatkin talked about, which is what is best for us as a couple. And I don't know, and we've talked about that. Actually, ADD or ADHD has a reasonably high correlation with sex addiction. Obsessive compulsive disorder, probably too. So I absolutely agree with you. I don't know. And one of the things I think we do really well at Seeking Integrity, and I take a lot of credit for that, is we don't just do addiction treatment. I am very, very aware of and questioning and watching for mental health issues. And trust me, if someone comes into treatment with us and I see depression, spectrum, ADD, whatever it is, we're going to say to them, we cannot go forward unless you have this examination. And we will tell the spouse, we really can't go forward. And I agree. It's the same thing with you. I don't know how I would go forward without having that information, because I would feel like I'm contributing and giving and accepting and forgiving, but I don't know what I'm really dealing with. There was something else too. Oh, just you said medical doctor. This is not something for a medical doctor. This is something for a psychiatrist. Just like if you had cancer, you wouldn't go to your medical doctor, you would go to a cancer specialist. There, psychiatrists specialize in psychological disorders, how to assess and identify, and what medications to give. So please don't go see your family physician. I've seen too many people on the wrong medication. I'm not sleeping at night, this, that, and the other thing, when it really is part of a larger issue. So one thing is, and by the way, I do consultations, and I'm glad to sit with the two of you online for 2 hours and ask all the questions and the psychiatric and all that and do an evaluation with the two of you. But there's a bigger issue here for me, which is, why isn't he listening to you? Why isn't he just saying, honey, why isn't this making you, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I want our relationship to improve. If the simplest thing to make it better is I went to see a doctor for 2 hours and why can't, and you can come with me. Why am I not doing that? And that's what bothers me. By the way, he procrastinates and he's oppositional. I don't know, that might have something to do with the mental health issue, but nonetheless, the most important thing for me would be what is best for our relationship after everything I've done. And what is best for the relationship is for him to get evaluated by a professional. Let's move on,
And,
Tammy, unless you have
well,
a big thing to throw,
just
because
real
there's
quickly, I
so many
make
questions.
sure that it's an addiction specialist, because not all psychiatrists understand addiction. So getting someone who understands addiction and the mental health is really key to all of this. So I think the next question we kind of mostly have covered. We are 6 months post-discovery, and my husband lost his sobriety last week a couple different ways. This is the caveat. When he told me about the masturbation, he basically said it was okay because he was thinking of me and not using porn or other women. I'm interested to know what you think about this comment. This is a little different than the person who commented
But
that
let me
they were
say it a little
nauseous.
differently. I think he's full
Mhm,
of shit.
mhm.
That's basically my answer. He lost his sobriety, but we always try to soften the blow. We don't want you to get as angry at us. So how do you know what he was thinking of? It's much easier to say, oh, all I was thinking about is you, because you don't know the reality. If someone's a sex addict and they've lost their sobriety, all bets are off. And by the way, I only drank whiskey. I only drank wine. I only drank when we were home. You're still drinking. So I would want to know, what is his inner circle, what is his sobriety, and how is it affected by these issues? And besides, it's only 6 months. This is not going well. It's one thing to have a slip with masturbation. It's another thing to try to justify it by saying, oh, it was only looking at you. To me, that is pure addict thinking. It's not where my head would go, which, how can I upset them the least and make them feel the best? Oh, I'll tell them I was thinking of them. But you acted out, and that's what matters. So I don't feel comfortable with this. And for me, I agree with your intuition. This ain't right.
So the next one I'm going to read, but I have a thought
No,
on
this
this.
was
So
someone who asked, sorry, where are we at?
it's
505?
Hardy. Yeah. How
Right,
does someone
505.
deeply skeptical find and connect with a higher power? My partner and I both lack that connection, and it causes us to live for ourselves, not truly trust anyone or anything. So I would love for you to email me, Tammy, Tami at seekingintegrity.com. I mean, this is one of those, I do support sessions. They are not therapy, they're not treatment, but this is something. I have so many resources and ideas for you. They're 25 minutes, 50 minutes, so they're not long, but I would love the opportunity to share some resources with you in a deeper way than we can do in 2 minutes here. But I shared on a webinar recently, good orderly direction is, and people get caught up in the God thing or whatever, but I this is a topic that I have a lot of, so I'm going to shut up. So Dr. Rob.
Yeah, and we also have, just to say, we also have someone on the staff who has a master's in theology from
Mm-hmm,
Fuller, and he's also one of the people, not to knock you out of the box, Tammy.
mm-hmm,
He's
no,
also, Tammy can talk to you, they can talk to you. We don't charge a lot for these
yeah, no.
sort of direction discussions, but that's not what I want to say. I will tell you my belief, which comes right out of 12-step programs. They say in 12-step programs, and I won't say it accurately, but the healing begins, the possibility for healing it happens when 2 or more people are gathered. And so to me, when I see troubled people coming together and holding hands in a circle, when I see some of those people as role models for other people, when I see people coming in the door terrified and the group helps them feel safe, that's where I see the higher power is in what happens when people come together with their focus is on healing. So I don't need to look outside of a healing group to see miracles happen. I have seen people walk into 12-step programs, so has Tammy, who you just think there is no way they are ever going to get this. And it is the power of the group and the connections and their shared belief that I can get better. That to me is enough. That's all the higher power I need to see. I will say something that Dr. Tapkin said over the weekend, and I personally agree with this, that this may not be everyone's belief, but in some ways, for me to trust a higher power, I would have had to have trusted my parents growing up. Because when
Mm,
you are 3 or you're 2, those are your gods.
mm.
That is how you, you don't know about religion, you don't know about God when you're 2, but you do know, can I have faith and trust in these people that are bigger than me, who I am looking to for help and looking to for support, and they're my whole world, because that's what it's like when you're 2. If they fail you meaningfully, it is much harder later in life to, I think, believe that you will be taken care of, that you'll be supported, that you will have a connection. It takes more work. And so, that may also be part of why the 2 of you are skeptical, because of some of the things you may have to question about the past. So what I say to clients, and I'll say this to you, is throw out your old higher power and find a new one. One of the things I used to say to sponsees is write an ad. This is what, help wanted, looking for a higher power. Here are the things I'm looking for. Get a sense of what you really need or want. And then see how it goes from there. Tammy's not her head, so I think she's heard this
Yeah,
once
no, I
before.
agree. Yeah, yeah. This is such a journey, but you got to start somewhere. And so I'm so glad you're here, and just throwing that question out.
Yes.
And what I really appreciate about the 12 steps there, it's your higher power. Like Dr. Rob just said, what is your help wanted ad, say. That's like, you get the opportunity to do that, but it will also help you be connected in really meaningful ways with other people. So
One
in
more quick
addiction, we are
thing.
highly focused on us. So getting out of ourselves is, like Dr. Rob mentioned, service before. So that's part of the whole magic of it. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you are a couple and you're reinforcing each other's lack
Oh
of
yeah.
connection, then maybe this isn't something you should be turning to each other right now. Maybe finding your own support, finding your own journeys, and then coming back with what you've learned rather than reinforcing this skepticism back and forth between you might be helpful. Okay.
Oh, this one's
5:15.
hard. Yeah, I am the betrayed partner, and I'm so very angry. 2 years out from initial D-Day, and he just lied in his recovery for the last 2 years. I
Ooh.
sometimes am shaking out of rage. How do you know I am done? I'm so disgusted with my SA husband. Add on 12 years together, and this is his second D-Day in March. He revealed a lot more.
So I don't know what your financial resources are or time, but this is without question a situation where someone should come to residential treatment and come work with us. Obviously, this person is more invested in looking good, in stringing people along, in getting to work. There are deeper, more concerning issues that are driving this problem. And I don't mean just the problem of acting out. People slip, but the lying. We have someone I've recently worked with who, lying was the big issue. And even more so the dishonesty, and we have to get underneath that. So I'm not saying you have the resources, the time, or the money to go to treatment, but this is, and I think Cami would agree, one of those things where it's serious. Not only did he have or not have it and not tell you, but he's lie. I wonder if there's someone who's going to their therapist. Guess what? They lie to us too. It's amazing. You pay me to lie to me. I mean, think about that. So I don't know what's going on with him. Certainly, he could lose his marriage. He could lose his relationship. You may need to set a boundary at this point that you can't. By the way, are you sleeping together? Are you living together? What boundaries are you setting to keep yourself safe so that you're not walking around in rage all the time? Maybe he needs to go live with his sister, or maybe, he lives in the basement or whatever that is. I wouldn't necessarily want you to see him all the time, because it would just constantly bring out my fear and rage. The other is I just really want to validate your anger. And this is a situation where I want to be behind a spouse 110%. It is so unfair to ask you to try to trust me, to begin to believe in me, and then to be completely violating you the whole time. It's one thing to hide it at the beginning and then be found out, but to continue to set you up while I'm asking you to come to peace with me is just, well, it's disturbed and it's disturbing. And that's why I think, and if they can't come to treatment, they go to a meeting every day. They should see a therapist. This requires a lot of psychological and emotional work. This isn't just it's being presented as addiction, but there's a lot of what do we say, dirt underneath, what do we say,
Dirt underneath the
stuff under
rug,
that rock, or something under a
under the
rock. I'm
rug.
thinking rocks.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
There's a
So
lot of something under that. Well, anyway, there's a
you
lot
think
more going
about
on
that one.
underneath.
Yes, yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know which one there's so many little quips. I don't know which one you're.
It's all good. Something with rocks. Anyway, let's keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. So, but I just want, the what I hear, the physical manifestations, the shaking and the disgust, again, you having healthy boundaries. For you, Dr. Rob talked about some physical ones. I threw the link for our treatment program in the chat. Please do take a look at that. And we've had guys, I think the record was 11 years for lying to the therapist, but 4 years that I know of clients that have come to us that were taking chips at meetings. And, so they were lying to everybody in a 12-step group, as well. So unfortunately, when somebody, is that into, holding up an image and pretending, the program can't sink in. So I would encourage you to get a higher level of support. Okay, the next question. I actually had a question like this in email, so I looked this up. So I recently heard an audiobook or podcast about the dark triad and treatment of SA being harder to treat. My question is, are there any signs that may indicate that this may be a reason a person may absolutely be resistant or to even trying to explore the fact that they may be SAPA?
So you said you've seen this question, so maybe you can have some
So
thoughts.
somebody emailed me and I was like, I had to go look up what the dark triad is. So it's narcissism, Machiavellism, and psychopathy. So, but I was like, every addict has those traits, but you've talked about like narcissistic personality disorder is very different than a narcissistic trait
Rare.
in an addict. So
Right.
thoughts?
Every addict is narcissistic when we're acting out. I want what I want, and I'm going to lie and cheat, and hell will freeze over before I'll change it, because that's the most important thing to me is my drinking, my sexing, whatever it is. It seems to me, I really strongly resist this idea of us getting pathologized into sociopaths or into having a narcissistic personality disorder or being perpetrators. That's why I object to voyeurism. These are very serious things. And believe me, I have worked in mental hospitals. I know what crazy is. People come in and say, I'm so crazy. No, crazy is throwing shit at the walls and hiding under a bed and screaming. That's crazy. So when we start to talk about narcissism and sociopathy, it feels right. It feels like, especially if you want to throw a rock at someone, but I would be careful throwing or even believing in those kinds of terms. What I think about people who are resistant to SAPA is they're deeply ashamed. They want to keep doing what they're doing. They haven't had the right intervention treatment. You guys would be a good couple to also do a consultation with. Let's sit down together and say, what is your anger about? Why do you have these suspicions this is going on? And most importantly, why is your partner so resistant to treatment? One of the things I think I do best in consultation is listen to spouses. God, I don't mean to give this away. I listen to spouses, and then I turn to the addict and I say, did you hear all that? And what are you saying? You don't have a problem. Who would do that? Whatever that is. And, talk about kids and family and all that. So let me say one more thing. It is absolutely harder to recover from something that is naturally occurring. Sex is a naturally occurring experience. Eating is a naturally occurring experience. You don't have to drink. You don't have to gamble. You don't have to go do drugs, but you do need to eat. You do need to be sexual. And so in that way, they are harder to treat because recovery for me is not it. How do I say it's a double negative? Recovery for me is continuing to have sex in a healthy way, not never having it again. I doubt you would say recovery from an eating disorder or a food addiction is to never eat again, but you can never drink again. And so being constantly exposed to something that, is it healthy this time? Is it not healthy this time? Should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? That's why we need so much support, so much encouragement, so many clear boundaries and structure, because it can be harder to treat because it's amorphous in a way. Doesn't mean you can't recover, but you have to have really a lot of clarity and a lot of support about what recovery is and how to do it. And I don't mean to say alcohol is easy. It's not easy, but it is black or white.
Yeah, it's very different. So, okay, I need you to answer this one question and then you can go.
Okay, I will.
Okay. This is 526. In your experience, Dr. Rob, do betrayed partners ever feel differently if the SA identifies their trauma? My SA husband is looking at going to inpatient.
Well, first off, is going inpatient, please come see us. It's been very frustrating for me to see, oh, they went here or there, and then they come back and say that was a terrible experience, or I didn't get what I needed, or trust me, I've been doing this 30 years. Tammy doesn't know this, but I plan on retiring in not too long. Well, maybe she knows a little bit.
I do.
And I think, by the way, just to say something more
Not
about
next
inpatient.
week.
Oh, didn't I tell you?
No.
Let me just say something more about inpatient or residential treatment. It isn't about the name of the person who's on the door, and that includes me. It's about who is doing the work. You know, I just heard a story about someone who went to see a very expensive therapist, very well-known therapist, and who they ended up seeing was an intern who didn't have a license yet. That happens all too often. People go to treatment centers often to train so they can go out there and get in the real world and work. Make sure, whether it's us or someone else, I mean, all of our therapists are licensed. All of our therapists are masters or PhDs. All of our therapists are either in the middle of or have completed their CSAT training. That stuff matters. So let me go back to your question. I do think it's helpful for a betrayed partner to understand my brokenness. It's easier for you. I'm not saying you should forgive me. How do I say this? What happened to me will help you understand how I made the decision to do what I did. But the fact that I made these decisions, I am still responsible for, regardless of what happened to me. I've seen too many addicts say, oh my God, you don't know what my mom did, and I was beaten and I was left alone. Of course I have an addiction. That's not it. I have an addiction. I've been lying and acting out. And I think the genesis for that is these things that happen, but I am an adult. I'm responsible. I knew better. I made these choices. So it's a little bit picky thing to pull apart. But of course, I mean, if I understand some of the really difficult things that happen to you, I'm going to think less that you're a bad person who meant to hurt me. And it'll be easier for me to think of you as a really broken person who has struggled for a long time and ended up hurting me or made bad decisions. So one of the things we do in couples therapy, by the way, in couples therapy where the crisis is over, is we will ask one spouse, tell your husband or wife what you went through when you were younger and what was that like? And often they hear stories they've never heard before. And what happens is they grow mutual empathy and compassion. So have compassion for the trauma, feel badly that someone you love went through that. You don't need to have compassion for their addiction or the ways they've hurt you. And by the way, if he or she goes to inpatient and they don't come to see us, I don't ever want anyone to tell you you're codependent. Don't let anyone blame you or make you responsible or ask you to reflect on yourself related to my acting out. My acting out, whatever it comes from, is my decision. You made me miserable. You may have gained 300 pounds. You may be an awful person, but I can leave you. I can go for a walk. There's a lot of things I can decide to do. My decision to act out has to do with me. And the implication that codependency gives us that somehow the spouse, the partner, or the family is contributing to the problem makes me crazy. And that's why I wrote Prodependence, because I'm absolutely supportive of family members just loving each other and trying to make things better without that being something wrong about them, even if the person they love is troubled and hurting them. So
two quick things to tag on to that. So, because it says, ever feel differently if the SA identifies their trauma. Every person that comes to SILA has, trauma, abandonment, abuse, grief, loss. There's some mix of, of abandonment. I mean, there's something going on. And so, like Dr. Rob said, I now understand better. It's not,
insight.
it's insight. and you can look at that person in a different way of like, I see their brokenness and I still love them. I see all these amazing things about that person. But the other thing is, often people go, well, if I just understand the why, and that, then we're going to be able to fix all of this. And I always say the how is a more important question, because those layers on the why, it can be 20 years and you can learn something deeper. So it really is, how do we, with this information, move forward and have the tools? And we have a family specialist that works with partners and spouses of those that are coming to us. I threw the link
And your therapist.
I threw the link in because we have why expertise matters. Like, check us out. It's a small community of people, and you've got Dr. Rob, Dr. David, 3 master's level professionals, the level of expertise, working with clients. And we've had clients that have gone to every other treatment program. So what we do is
I'm getting
different.
Embarrassed now.
Well, I don't care about you. I'm telling you, I'm passionate about people getting the help that they need. And I want them to have the best choice. I often say, if we're not your first treatment program, we sure want to be your last. And I mean it, so that's enough. Okay.
I got to say one more thing. You wrote a great
Okay.
answer to attention deficit disorder. And I just want to add one more thing. I
Mhm.
assume everyone can read your answer, right? But I want to say one more thing, which is, yes, get help. Yes, get an evaluation. Maybe medication is helpful, but there are some great books on how to live with someone who has ADD, how to deal with ADD as a couple. I think some of the things that happen to ADD you can take personally. Why do you always do this? Why do you never do that? And I think if you come to understand the disorder and how to work with it as a couple, and there's some great books out there about that, it will help you negotiate it, medication or not. So thank you, Tammy. And I know you really do care about me. You
I
didn't
do
mean
really
that
care
the way-
about you. I just didn't. If you're blushing, I don't care if I embarrass you. How's that? And the
Okay.
person that asked that question, that we didn't get to, at 5:47, email me, Tammy, TAMI @seekingintegrity.com, and I'll do my best to give you some resources. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rob. Thanks for hanging in there,
Bye,
everybody.
guys. Thank
Bye.
you.